Hey guys, welcome back to Big Strong Books. I am Reed, and today we are discussing chapters 18 and 19 of the Dragonbone share. So we're going to jump right in here to chapter 18, A Net of Stars. And this chapter mainly documents Simon and Binnenbeek getting to know each other a little more. So Binnenbeek tells Simon, he usually travels to the south, as he terms it, about, once a year. And what's interesting is that, so he talks about meeting Kentaka, who is his wolf. And this is an indication of something, an element that is, I feel like, common in fantasy stories, or at least it's a familiar, if not trope, then a familiar exploration of kind of a unique bond that a person, or a troll, or a sentient character can have with an animal. We have dragons and people. We've had that connection before, but this is, and we've had, I think of the wargs in A Song of Ice and Fire, but with this, it's a very unique connection that the Econoc people have with wolves. And so Binnenbeek briefly relays that, and he regales Simon with these stories, and it says here, this is page 265 of the mass market version. As the afternoon passed and they tramped on through the crowding trees, Binnenbeek answered questions about his travels, displaying an inviolable familiarity with places Simon had trod only in daydreams. He spoke of the summer sun revealing the gleaming inner facets of icy Mintahawk like a jeweler's deft hammer, of the northernmost regions of this same Edelorte forest, a world of white trees and silence in the tracks of strange animals, of the cold outer villages of Rimmersgard that had barely heard of the court of Prester John, where wild-eyed, bearded men huddled over fires in the shadows of high mountains, and even the bravest of them feared the shapes that walked the howling darkness above. He spun tales of the hidden gold mines of Hernastir, secret serpentine tunnels that wound down into the black earth among the bones of the Granisbog Mountains, and he spoke of the Hernastiri themselves, artful, dreamy pagans whose gods inhabited the green fields and the sky and stones, the Hernastiri who of all men had known the Scythi best. And the Scythi are real, Simon said quietly, with wonder and more than a little fear as he remembered. The doctor was right. And then Simon confirms that, yes, of course they are real. And so they're trying to make their way towards something that Binnenbeek calls the knock. And Simon, he carries out a flute, and he does a little musical thing. And as later in the evening, Simon starts to have these interesting moralistic, ethical thoughts and questions. He thinks to himself, how could the troll feel such affection toward something he was going to kill? I certainly don't feel that way about the bloody woodsman, he thought. He probably would have killed me as quickly as he would have killed the Scytha man. I wonder if he had a wife. Did he have children? But he was a wicked man. Still, bad men can have children. King Elias has a daughter. Would she feel bad if her father died? I certainly wouldn't. And I don't feel bad that the woodsman is dead, but I would feel sad for his family if they found him dead in the forest that way. So it's just an interesting thought that passes over Simon's head. And again, Simon and Binnenbeek, it's almost like they muse over their place in the universe. Binnenbeek tells him a little bit about Mizumaru's net, this constellation, the scar, and sings a song about Seta and Kikasuit. And so that's kind of the end of chapter 18. And then we get into chapter 19, the blood of Saint Hoderund. And in chapter 19, they're continuing along in the forest, they're continuing off the beaten path. And Simon, as has been displayed early in the book, starts to grow a little impatient for traveling in this manner. And, Benedict just tells Simon, there are other considerations to be aware of. And Benedict confers that Simon lived in a castle, even though Simon never said anything about that. And one thing that Benedict does is he casts these things called knuckle bones, kind of to tell him, as like an omen or an oracle for him. And he kind of has some, not necessarily ominous, but more foreboding pieces. And later on, Benedict starts to display to Simon the age of the forest, that it's not a forest for men. It wasn't a forest for Scythi. It was there long before men, long before Scythi were even there. And then as they got into, as they're getting closer to the Wildhelm Hills and the Knock, Simon learns that where they're going is Saint Hoderund's. It's a monastery that's more of a place that can harbor wayfarers and people going along the road in this forest. And Benedict it's almost like he tests Simon's knowledge of the world, and he says, have you heard of Oxamroth? And of course we know, and Simon knows of Oxamroth. That was the big confrontation between the Hernestiri and the Rimmersmen. But within the area around St. Hoderund's, this monastery, before it was a monastery, there was an area where they called the Boneyard, an area where this brutal battle was had. And Benedict tells Simon the story of Hoderund, who was a Rimmersman who became converted to the Adonite Church. And right before this confrontation between the Hernestiri and the Rimmersmen, he kind of went out and begged both sides to have peace, but they didn't listen and they fought. And later on, Hoderund was made a saint. And so, we learn here truly that regardless of where Simon goes, whether it be a spot within the Hayholt or now here in the Edelhorte forest, that there's no place that he can go to where he escapes the ramifications of history. That history is all around him, some old, some new, and where he goes and he witnesses events that are shaping history. Simon has an inkling that he is in events that will be long documented in history, that he's in a very important time, even though I guess the full scope of that may not be completely evident yet. But then when they get near to the monastery, they realize it's been burning. And Benedict tells Simon this has only been hours old, and they find these dead monks. And eventually they, Kantaka goes, and she's kind of has her hackles raised and everything. And then they find a man named Brother Hangfisk, who, mentions that there's others, Brother Langrian, Brother Dolcaius, who have been wounded, and I believe even in just looking for this, even Hengfisk, I don't think even knows the full extent of what happened, or at least he's not letting on. And they go back, and Hengfisk leads them to Brother Langrian, and Langrian all of a sudden almost wakes up. And he comes out of this dream, and he looks at Simon, and he says, "The black wagon, it's coming for me. They're taking me back to that terrible place." And then Dokias, they find Dokias, and Dokias says, you know who it is. You have been marked like I was. I saw them as they passed the white fox as they walked in my dream. Their master has sent them to put ice on our hearts and take away our souls on their black wagon." And as one could imagine, anybody in this situation, Simon just breaks down, because it brings back those memories. Another interesting thing to note within this chapter, and probably the last thing I'll note, the last pertinent thing, is when Hengfisk, when Simon and Binabik and Kantaka find Hengfisk, this is what Simon says to him. He says, "Are there others alive?" The boy asked gently. "We will help you, and then too, if we can. I am Simon, and that is my friend, Binabik. I believe you met Kantaka already." So there's clearly there's a bond forming between Simon and Binabik, and now Simon is comfortable enough to clearly vocalize it even to others, even to strangers, because he doesn't know Hengfisk from another person. So he says, "This is my friend Binabik." So Simon is finding trust, even in this world where clearly still very traumatizing, very brutal things are happening as they come across to this monastery. Simon still has somebody to lean on, and now he has found that one person like that in Binabik. So it's something cool to see. So in terms of spoilers, I don't think I really have anything major to discuss. This was more so just the bond between Simon and Binabik was building as they go into these places. Again, the scope of history, as Tad Williams has explored in chapters past, continues here. So yeah, let me know what you guys think of chapters 18 and 19 of the Dragonbone Chair, and I will see you guys next time for a discussion of chapter 20.